or he has been abused. So obviously, it's kind of important to work that down. So with children, not necessarily, they don't have the minds to comprehend what they're going through emotionally or even physically. So like a preschooler, when you're talking about like playing house or drawing families, that's a big way of telling if they've been abused or not. So this side right here is like mom and dad are happy, I'm happy. You can see this is a healthy household relationship. This on the other side is mom and dad are fighting, I'm crying, mom or dad is hitting me. This is what my life's like outside of school. That's another big sign. And playing house can also be a very huge sign because they're representing what they're seeing and that they don't know what a stable household is, so they're giving their take on what their stable household is at home. So why is it important to address child abuse at an early stage? Well, when you're being abused, or not even if you know you're being abused, you're in a cycle. So you're in this constant emotional, I'd say, dysregulation, and you're never gonna get that stable look at on life. So let's say Anne, I guess I don't know, I'm making up a name. Anne has been abused for all her life, got out of abuse, didn't go to therapy, had a child. She herself could become an abuser because of what she's seen through her parents or her household. So going on that can also keep like a generational cycle of abuse. And if you don't break that cycle, obviously it can hurt thousands of children, thousands of families, and even other people outside of the families or households. Stopping early cases to help prevent long-term mental health effects prevents escalation from the abuser and even help prevent other cases continuing later on. So, like I said, you don't have a stable outlook on life. So the importance of schooling and preschool teachers having a good, actually just people around you in general is great for kids, because if your mom and dad are fighting and you go to school, teachers are yelling at you, you're getting degraded, beaten, bullied, whatever, that doesn't give you a good outlook on literally anything. So, but not like bragging on myself, but I try to keep my kids together when I teach them. So a way of coping, I take their middle finger and their thumb on both hands, and when you press them together, that helps give you a sense of your body and kind of help calm you down. Know that you have everything together. I'm probably doing it right now, I can't lie. But having a sense of control is especially important when you're being abused, mistreated, really anything. So just keeping that stable consciousness of mind is a huge thing. So if you don't take care of that initial abuse earlier on, if you decide to go to therapy and better yourself, you take something called an ACE test, which is an adverse childhood experience. So when an adult, or like I'd say later teens, when a person has a higher scale, the worse the mental health is. And there's 3 categories, but there's 10 total tests, results, I don't know. But they're mainly used by in research or healthcare settings. So mental health professionals can kind of help assist you in what you're lacking and what you have too much in, if that makes sense. But if you do also get therapy when you're younger, those mental health professionals may use like more age-appropriate settings, like play therapy, drawing, coloring, so on. Here's an example of an ACE test screener. So it's just gonna be like, I'm sure probably the majority of you have had to take a screener, and like when you go get a physical, they make sure they do that now as well. So another question is, how can therapy help prevent the cycle of abuse in future generations? So getting the obvious out of the way, when you're going to therapy, you're learning healthy coping mechanisms that can help kind of defy what you had. Promotes healthy role models in your life in a stable situation and promotes emotional regulation. So like I said earlier, if you're in an abusive environment, you're more likely to become an abuser or experience abuse later on in a different relationship, even dating, marriage, church, so on. It's important to break it rather than just keep doing the cycle over and over and over again, because you're just diminishing yourself as a person. And keeping just, like when you wake up for school, you wake up, brush your teeth, get dressed, do whatever, you know that you're ready to go to school. But people who have been abused don't know how they're doing themselves, how they're doing. They don't have a healthy outlook on how they are. And kind of like putting church in it. As Christians, we don't need to just throw money at organizations. While that's good, I'm not saying that's bad. You can throw all your money at an organization and you don't really care about it. So, other than just throwing money, it helps just to be present with the people, see the people that have been abused, be with them and love them. And in the Bible, Apostle Paul encourages in Romans 12:15 for believers to weep with those who weep and bear with the fallings for the weak.
Yes, y'all got any questions, comments, or feedback for Zoe?
Where have you been that you've seen this type of abuse? Physical, mental, etc.?
Like, where is in like, is that like institutional?
Well, like where have you seen the abuse really take place, even outside of the U.S.?
Well, I went to the Dominican Republic and I've seen kids that are malnourished, not treated. They dig through like the trash cans and the trash fields. And they have sex trafficking as well. So I actually went out on the street with my mom and a couple other people on a prayer group. And there was like a 2-year-old? No. There's 2 boys. I'd say maybe 6, 7, and they were out on the streets partaking in sex trafficking. So, that's how I've seen it. I've also seen it, funny enough, church preschools as well. I don't know if that like exactly answers it.
It does. Helps the audience see that you've actually seen abuse, especially within the sex trafficking and what that does to children. Not just once, you've been 3 years in a row, so.
I got a couple things, Zoe. I really, when I was writing down just a minute ago, I like that you mentioned like money isn't just this cure-all. Like there are good organizations out there with good purposes, good missions and whatnot. Throwing a bunch of money at it kind of keeps us a distance, right? And this is a really personal problem, and personal problems need people, right? So I really like that was kind of you're right, that is the biblical application there, that's the case. That we're to weep with those who weep. Question for you, so you mentioned, you talk a lot about the cycle, which makes sense, like, you know, that abused children oftentimes grow up becoming abusers, becoming people who are abused. research or whatever, where, that cycle is broken it seems like more because of the experience. In other words, like, for instance, I've heard, stuff about addiction. You know, people who grow up with their parents being addicted to substances, whatever, that a lot of times that makes it less likely that they become addicted, or addicted to things. Is there any evidence that, like, someone who grows up in an abusive situation and is abused, like, is there any evidence that, like, they kind of go the other direction where it's like, man, if there's anything, like, I'm not growing up, I'm not raising my kids that way, et cetera?
Well, honestly, personally, I think it's because they've had that stable environment outside of home.
Oh, I agree.
So you're seeing that example that, oh, life is good, people are good, it's not just everyone's terrible, I hate this place.
Right. So it's not necessarily a determining, like, not determined, there's hope, I guess, is
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. It's like,
There's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, that's good. And then also, one more thing, so just give you're the expert, just give us some personal advice. If at any point, whatever circumstances, I mean, I imagine we got people that, you know, will maybe not as involved as, like, you're actually working in daycares and stuff like that on a more regular basis, but for those of us that maybe just, like, helping out at church or, you know, even kids in the neighborhood or whatever, if we come across a situation where you said it's kind of touchy that you don't want to, like, be overbearing and just assume the worst, but if we come across a situation where it's suspected that there's some kind of abuse, what advice would you give? Like, you gave us some things to look out for, that was really helpful, but, like, what's that next step then?
Well, obviously, like, telling a teacher, if you couldn't tell a teacher, I would help assess the kid as much as you can. So even if it's just being there, guiding them, being the more positive outlook, that's the way I would kind of go, rather than just being like, he or she's being abused, watch out. Or I think that you can actually call a hotline for another person and direct the police to their house instead of where you're calling from.
Right. It's interesting. Have you, like, in your work experience, have you had to do any, like, mandated reporter type stuff? Is that term familiar to you?
Well, when I talk like I taught preschool, I've only done like a church preschool because I'm not DSO certified.
Right.
But I have had to go up to my boss, me and like my lead teacher, we've had to go up to my boss and be like, hey, I think you need to go report this, because like the girl I talked about where she would come in with her mom all teared up crying, she was actually drawing a picture of her family with me because we were doing like cute little photo frames, and we're like, okay, let's draw a picture of our family. She drew her mom with like those big angry bird eyebrows, and I was like, oh, and it was just, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it was just her and her mom and grandma, and I was like, where's your dad? Because I knew she had one, so I was like, where's your dad? Is he working? Is he like playing football? What is he doing? She had to be, I think, 3.5 or 4. She's like, Daddy not at home. And I was like, oh, why is that? Well, turns out her dad either shot her mom or pointed a gun towards her mom. And yeah. So obviously I think you're gonna
Yeah.
go for that one.
Stuff. Anything else? Any other feedback, comments? Classmates, or got anything for Zoe? Cool.
What's like, what can you see for like the emotional side of children? Because I know you had mentioned something or how they're more negative, but like what can you see in those emotions just alone?
Like signs.
Yeah, like signs and stuff, and how do they react to just everyday things that they have to deal with, like stress-related things that they see in school or outside of the home and stuff, like when their friend, picks on them for just doing something stupid,
Well,
something simple like that. What's their emotional reaction?
I can't speak for all kids, but it's like an initial blow up. Like I taught a kid who was probably emotionally abused. I didn't see her after the year I taught her, but she like fell and tripped, and nothing was in front of her. It was something like, oh, I fell, let's get up, it's fine. She would cry and cry and cry and cry, and we would be like, you're okay, everyone's okay, you're fine. She would have like these big emotional explosions, And then she would take him out on other people, like she'd push all the other preschoolers. She hit me, a teacher, and like co-teacher. So I think emotionally when you're being like manipulated or mistreated, you're either gonna like hide back and just huddle in the corner, or you're gonna have that big explosive like emotion.
Anything else? Alright, thanks Zoe.